today, and they used to go there year after year, so they thought it might be a good idea. The antique store owner said, yes, actually, there's one that's for sale. It's down on Chemin du Golfe. If you go down past the Gulf, and it's by the water. And he said, c'est juste que le chemin n'est pas déblayé l'hiver. Puis ça fait 2 ans qu'elle est à vendre, cette maison-là, puis il n'y a personne qui est intéressé à l'acheter. So we decided, my parents said, well, let's go take a look. So they went down to the end of the road, and there you were, house, and we were like, is this a chalet? Like, we didn't think, to us, a chalet wasn't that style of a house. For us, you were a big house. And you were there tall and steady in those high winds and that rain coming down. So they said, well, we'll take a look. And they contacted the real estate agent who came down. And I'm sure, house, I can just feel you that when we came up the steps that day, you could hear us coming up the steps, the scratch of the key in the lock. And you must have said, who's coming over today? This is not summertime. My shutters are all closed. I'm closed for the winter. So what's going on here? So the real estate agent opens the door, and it's very dim inside, right? It's dark. Like I said, those wooden black shutters were closed all around the house. So it was very dark. And we thought, okay, we're going to walk in. It's an empty house. The agent flips on the light switch, and it's like, oh, wow. It was all furnished with old-fashioned antique furniture. So there was that dining room table. There was the high pressed back chairs all around with the circular braided mats on the seats. And there was a picture on the wall. And it was an old-fashioned picture of a little girl sitting up. And to me, it looked like my mom. And I was going, this is so weird. Maybe it's a good omen. Maybe we belong here. And then there was also the buffets with the glass doors, and they were full of old teapots, Sadler teapots, china cups, colored glass. We went through to the living room, and there was a brick fireplace, old-fashioned brick fireplace, and we went up the wooden staircase, and there were the 5 bedrooms upstairs, and they were all had beds in them, all made up, ready to sleep in. There were big, thick, flowery bedspreads. There were catalogues, there were lays, there were little wooden night tables with old books on them. There were framed poems on the walls, and to me it was the Flanders Field one. I was like, oh, wow, that really got me. So we were very impressed, and there's needless to say that it was love at first sight. And my parents it took a couple of months, a few months, and they had signed the papers. And house, you had new owners. You had new ecstatic owners. They were still living in Chibougamau, but we came over for every holiday that they could come. So for a few years, they were still in Chibougamau. So they used to come for Christmas, Easter. We used to come for Easter, the long weekend in May. We used to come in June, but in the summer, we didn't spend that much time here because my parents had the outfitting camp in Chibougamau, and that was high season then. And then, of course, we kept coming in October for the hunt. And so and the antique owner store owner was right. The road was not plowed in the winter. But that was fine. We used to do our grocery shopping at Épicerie Brillant. We would park at La Grange Théâtre, and then we'd walk from Grange Théâtre to the house with little children's plastic sleds with the groceries. And my father kept up his hunting. He would hunt seal on the river. He would hunt ducks. And we would just go, we were free. We'd go all over on the islands, the shore. This is before Big Park. Okay, so we used to do what we wanted. And he used to bring seals right up on the beach at high tide. So he still had his freighter canoe that he would bring, but after a while he bought a Boston whaler. It was much better suited to the big waters of the St. Lawrence. As the years went by, I was living in Kuujjuaq, and I had a spouse, and I was expecting. And the hospital there had very basic services. So if ever there was no surgery, no emergency services. So if ever I had a problem, last minute problem during labor, I'd have to be medevaced. And I would have been 7 or 8 hours away by plane, but with all the delays to get to a major hospital. So I decided to come to Rimouski to have my new baby. And it was wonderful. She was due at the end of August. So I spent all of July and August with Vieux house in Big. And when my feet got swollen and my legs got swollen, I would go down to low tide and walk in a bit of water, and it was so refreshing. I also had this mattress that I had on the veranda, and I would lie down there and have naps and just relax. And it was nice because it was in the shade, and there'd be this little breeze that would come along, and I had all the fragrance of the wild roses because they were blooming then, right? And I could also smell the seaweed coming in with the high tide. So it was a great place to wait for baby. And then I went to the hospital. We were there maybe 2 days when she was born. And then I came back home to you house. And so this was a special moment for you too, house, because you had never had a newborn baby within your walls at that moment. Even though you were over 100 years old, people didn't come and have their babies here. So I learned to be a mom for the first time there. I learned to breastfeed my new baby. I learned to bathe my new baby. And after about 2 weeks, then we were ready to go, and I went back north. So then this was August, and of course we were coming back for Christmas to spend Christmas. We all spent Christmas in Vic. So by that time, Sarah was about 4 months old when we came back with her. That was at Christmas. She was about 4 months old. And it was a bit of a different Christmas that year because for Sarah, for baby Sarah, it was her first Christmas. But for Dad, it was going to be his last Christmas. And this image that I have in my mind that's very clear was of Dad sitting at your big wooden table, dining room table, and he was working on a painting. And he was going through chemo, and he was just getting used to wearing a wig. And here he was working on this painting. It was sort of a naive, colorful painting. And it was of St. Hubert, who is the patron saint of hunters. And on his painting that he was working on, St. Hubert is kneeling in prayer before an altar in the forest. And there's trees and there's deer. And we didn't use that word at the time, like meditative. But looking back, I think it was meditative for him to just take some time and work on that painting. And it was also an act of hope for him. And at that same Christmas, I have another image in my mind of him looking out the window that gives out on the bay. And it was winter, right? So it was all white and it was all iced up, and there was these jagged mounds of ice, like how the tide does it. And beyond that was the range, the peaks, the dark silhouettes of the hills. And he was in a very solemn mood, and I did not interrupt him because I could tell he needed to be alone with this. And he had his arms stretched out, his hands were pressing down the windowsill, and as he looked out, I knew he was thinking, he was going through his predicament. And his predicament was lung cancer. And he knew that this landscape that he loved, and that he loved to go with the Boston Whaler, that this landscape would carry on without him. So now I'm sort of lost this part. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, okay. So then the following year, so that was the following Christmas, we didn't come to see you house, right? We skipped that year because we were in Chibougamau. And the day before Christmas is the day we buried Dad. So he was 51 and Mom was 51, and she became a widow. And it was devastating for her. She was in deep grief, and she didn't really know now where her life was going to take her. But she made a major decision, which was the best decision she could make. She moved from Chibougamau permanently. She sold the house, and she moved to be full-time with you house. And she got her bed and breakfast going at that time. And so she threw herself into renovating, decorating, advertising. She sat on tourism committees. She greeted her clients, and then her clients, her customers, became repeat customers, and they became friends. She even had people from the original families who were on the point who would come and stay at the bed and breakfast, and that was very meaningful for them, and it was also a very enriching experience for Mom. She also threw herself into gardening. She planted lupins, she planted lilacs, and she planted wild rose bushes. And she also had her flower beds that were blooming throughout the summer and flower pots hanging off the veranda. So she managed to come out of that deep hole of grief, and she managed to come out and she bloomed. And it was thanks to you, House. You were a big help there. And she did not only survive through her grief, she was also thriving. So through the years, my children were coming here on a regular basis, and my niece, and they played in the house, they played in your rooms, they played in the yard, they played on the beach, and they've developed a deep attachment for you as well. And now it's my grandchildren who come here. And so you realize, House, this is amazing. You've already touched our family over 4 generations. It seems like that happened in no time.